born in Brooklyn, New York in 1925.
Military.
Yes, I had my uncle who was in the army, and his name was Dijazu also. Dijazu was my mother's maiden name, and Vinci was my father's. My daughter, her name is Diane, and she is 62 years old this January. Military, as soon as I graduated high school, I graduated June 30th, 1943, and I was in the Navy in July 1st, 1943. So, I enlisted. I had to get my dad's permission to join because I was 17 and a half. And I took tests. The Navy was giving tests for officers to go into the service. And we took tests while we were in high school, nationwide tests all across the United States. And from that, they qualified certain people, and we passed, my buddy and I, we passed the exams, evidently with pretty good results. And they sent us to officers training school in Boston. Mostly we could only communicate with letters, because we couldn't communicate with radio, because the Japanese would know where we were. So we would write letters, and it was very hard getting letters, because you didn't go to port too often, only when you ran out of supply. So mostly by letters. When the war ended, I was in the Philippines, Subic Bay, and we had just arrived there with some supplies for the Navy ships there.
How did you return home from the Philippines?
Well, a ship would go from the Philippines to San Francisco. The ship would go about 15 knots an hour. It would take 30 days. We'd go via the Aleutian chain, and we would go from there, from the Philippines to San Francisco, and that's where I got discharged.
Back home.
It wasn't easy, but I'd been gone for three years. My dad, I was going to stay here in the Pacific because I came from New York City, Brooklyn, and it's cold there, and I saw palm trees. So I called my dad and said, "I'm not coming home." But he said, "Well, you've been gone for 3 years, but I'd like to see you." So I went to New York for a year.
Okay.
It really affected my life, okay? Because I was born in Brooklyn. It's not a nice place to be. I was really a street kid. I came from a poor family. My dad was an immigrant, and my mom was an immigrant. They didn't speak any American when they came here. They only spoke Italian. So I grew up on the streets of Brooklyn. It's a tough neighborhood. The Navy taught me a lot of discipline. I mean, I had to say, yes sir, no sir. I had to make my own bed. If the bed wasn't made right, I'd have to do it over. We had to march. A lot of discipline. So it took the toughness out of me and made me a responsible adult. Well, as I say, I went to officers training school. When I got out, I was an ensign. And what they did is they taught us, they sent me to a 3-month school where I learned artillery, how to shoot the guns. We had a battery of guns on the cruiser. There were 6-inch guns. The 6-inch shells were pretty big shells. So they taught me how to shoot. Well, the worst thing was when I was in the Atlantic on the cruiser. One time we were we thought we spotted a submarine. So we started going in whatever the direction was. And we found the submarine. The only problem was the submarine was shooting torpedoes at us. Well, one of the torpedoes hit our ship. So you would think, well, God, you gotta hit the ship, you gotta sink it. What happened, it didn't explode. The torpedo got stuck in the side of our ship. And we got the sub, but here we have a live torpedo in the size of the ship. So we hurried back to a base in Philly to get there because we wanted to off that ship. That torpedo went off, we'd be in deep problem. So that was the worst part of it. The best experience was in the Pacific. I was assigned a supply ship. Now, the supply ship had all kinds of supply. So we had one hold that was a refrigerated hold. So it would keep ice cold drinks, meat, eggs, all the stuff that was on rations during World War II. Civilians were all on rations. But we were on board ship, so we had an allowance, a spoilage allowance on the ship. So we would spoil, according to our records, we'd spoil a lot of steaks, through desserts, milk. So the best thing was being on the supply ship and eating really good, because on a regular ship, you don't eat that good. Eat pretty good. Navy food was a lot better than Army food. Well, we were all gung-ho to get over Germany and go to war with Germany, and then with the Japs bombed Pearl Harbor, we were all in this. So, yeah, I hate to say this, but I hated the Germans and I hated the Japs, and we wanted to get them. I was born, as you can see, with a little baby there. I was probably about a year old. I was born in 1925, so this would be 1926. Okay, here I am a junior in junior high school. And if you can see it up there, there's a medal there, because I won a medal for being in the science division. I was really very interested in science. This is Brooklyn Technical High School. It's a full city block, it's 7 stories high. It had 4,000 students. And it was so big, it had its own radio station, it had an antenna up there. And seniors, for their senior project, would build an actual house in there. You know, every year, the seniors would build a house, they'd tear it down for the next class to build a house. And actually, once you got in there, you couldn't get out. They had monitors at all the doors. We had a cafeteria, so you were supposed to eat the cafeteria. So when you went in there at 9 o'clock, you didn't go out until 3 o'clock. These are 3 other guys I met here in Corona Del Mar. They all went to Brooklyn Tech. We all met at Oasis Senior Center, exercise class. We didn't know each other beforehand, but they went for, not in the same class, but in different classes. But it's unusual to meet 4 alumni 3,000 miles away. This was when this Navy school was at MIT, but we were enlisted at that time. Then when we graduated, we became an officer, and an ensign in the Navy. This is the battleship, I mean the cruiser, who I spent in the Atlantic Ocean. Here's a seaplane. We had 2 seaplanes on this cruiser. Seaplanes were used for observation to spot enemy ships or submarines. When I got out of the service, one of the projects that I worked on was this one here. This is an astronaut. He didn't go to the Apollo section. Armstrong went there. But But what this is being here, we built a simulated moonscape. And so we designed this carrier. You know why they went to the moon? They went there to find out what it was made out of. They had the heat probes to go down to check the temperature of the moon. They had seismographs to check for earthquakes. So that's why the astronauts went to the moon. So I was just showing him how to handle the equipment, because if you didn't take the equipment out correctly, you punctured your suit, you were dead. This was a picture of me in Australia. One of the jobs that I had was building satellites. Actually, they're still for the Air Force. It's with the satellite, what they do is they monitor infrared systems. They monitor the rockets that propel the satellites up to the sky. We check the rockets, and from that way we could tell what the missile was on top of the rocket. And if it went towards the States, we would send the alarm to the Air Force, and they would probably launch the Minuteman in retaliation. This was a fishing trip I went on. That's a salmon. That's a good-sized salmon. And this was one of the trips. I did a lot of traveling with my life. I've been to 60 foreign cities all over the world. So that's travel. That's a lot of travel. For 5 years, that's all I did. I would spend 2 months of the year traveling all over the world. Down here is a group, a company. When I retired from engineering, I went to work as a stockbroker at Waddell & Reed, and I was with them 20 years. And I don't know if you could see down here, it was part of the Navy. Anyway, that's the story of my life.
Awesome.